Good evening, everyone. Go ahead and get started here in about a minute if you guys want to wrap up your conversations and find your seats. That was quick, much quicker than our teachers. Teachers do that just to remind me how it is to be in a classroom full of students, right? So, good evening, everyone. My name is Jared Wheeler. For those that I think we all know each other in here based on just a scan of the room, but glad to be here for our fourth community forum. It's an exciting time here in Knob Noster Public Schools as we begin building for the future, as can be seen in our communication series that's been going out over the last 5 to 6 weeks. We have a lot of opportunity and kind of some excitement in the district related to our facilities development. With us tonight is Brian Foxworthy. He's the owner-architect of Insight Design Studios. Insight Design began their work with the district back in 2016 when they came in and conducted a assessment of all of our facilities for capacity and size and all of the amenities that would serve the educational program. And since that time, we've really looked at different options for how to not only respond to the needs of the district today, but to do so in a way that also prepares us for the future. And that ultimately led to the concept of the Knob Noster High School Innovation Campus, which you will be hearing about tonight. We have a lot of exciting things in terms of the funding strategy. I know at the last session, this is a repeat of session 3, there were questions about the when are our taxes going to go up, which is something that's on the mind of everyone. And for this initial phase, this is not a tax ballot issue for our community. We've looked for other opportunities through grant funding to get us here. We've built on our impact aid, our federal funding that flows into our budget every year to support these facility needs. There may be a time in the future if we receive another federal grant to get this entire project across the finish line where we would come to our voters, but that is down the road and something that we would definitely engage with the community on. So I want to get that out of the way because that was the big question at the last session, and we can talk in specific detail about taxes if you guys would like, either here or in a meeting with me at your convenience. Without further ado, Brian Foxworthy and his lovely wife Jackie have built Insight Design into one of the state's trust me, she's his better half. Built their business from a startup into one of the premier architectural engineering firms in the state, specifically in the K-12 arena. So we're excited to have him here. We can also officially announce that we have, the board went through a procurement process for our construction manager, and we have brought on Nabholz Construction, who is out of a Kansas City office, originally from Conway, Arkansas, but they have done literally probably hundreds of school-related CMAR projects. So we've got a great team put together, and you guys are going to hear kind of where we've been, what has brought us to this point today, and where we're headed. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian, and let's make this very casual. If you guys have questions as we go along, please feel free to jump up, wave your hand, and we'll be glad to speak with you. Again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Jared. Okay, so this process had to do with the board finding the need for athletic facilities. And as you know, the stadium right now needs some work. The board decided we need to do some things to tackle some of those issues. They outlined 6 goals that we wanted to look at on this. The wrestling locker rooms, 3 wrestling mats in a practice facility, weight room, 8-lane track and turf, and repair the bleachers, do something with the bleachers, and then something out at the baseball fields for like a multi-purpose building. So those are the 6 goals that they had in mind when we started looking at this assessment on the athletics upgrades. So the first place we started was clicker won't work. Oh, see, now I ruined it. Show's over, guys. So the first place we wanted to look was the existing stadium. We wanted to see what's there, and how we can make this more of a premier stadium for your district. So everybody pretty much knows the site. You can tell by the existing aerial, we're very constrained. We're constrained on all three sides really, and for this side, we've got major drainage issues coming through here. You know, these old concrete bleachers, they've served their life, I think. Many of you could probably attest to that. The concession building, the bathroom building, it's all tired, right? It all needs to be upgraded and really make it something Nom Notch should be proud of. So in order to do that and to kind of accomplish the 6 goals that were set forth, we want to add an 8-lane track. In order to do that, we've shifted the track and the field down a hair to the south and a little bit to the east. So we've got a new track surface. We've got new turf. Take out the concrete bleachers, make new bleachers that will seat 2,000 folks, and make it handicap accessible. That was a big thing. A new concession building, restrooms, wrestling, accessible path up. All this can be accomplished on this site. In addition, we're looking over at the ball fields. Go ahead and put up a multi-purpose building over there. So that's option 1. The pros of this option is the traditional setting. It's Nom Notch Stadium. It's where it's always been. There's some pros to that. It's you can host district track meet now. You've got 8 lanes. You can do that. Accessibility is addressed to the bleachers, to the locker rooms and the bathrooms. New concession stand, and this is the lowest upfront cost we would have. The cons of this is like we talked about. The site is very constricted. There's not much else we could do on this site. Football field orientation on high school football, we like to run it north-south if possible. It's been like this for years, so if that's a con, it's typically a con, but it's been like this, and you guys have gotten used to it. The soccer field, the width of that track and the width of the field, we cannot really get a soccer field on that. We like to do a broke back track, it's called, and we'll show you that here in a minute, in order to get a soccer field in it. We still have parking issues, we still have drainage issues, we still have like scheduling issues. If we were to do this project, I think we'd be out of the stadium for a year during football season. We'd have to find some place to play football because all of this work's going to be done. We really haven't addressed any of the academic issues with the high school with this plan. We're just addressing what's going on with the stadium, and it's the lowest cost, but we'll get into that. At the bottom line there, you'll see if you can read that. It says we're going to reject a $4.4 million FEMA grant if we go with this option, and I'll explain that now. So back, 2 years ago, we applied for a FEMA grant at this high school campus, trying to get money to build a new gymnasium and to house a safe room to protect the kids. That grant application was denied. We since then put in a grant application for the new site where the ball fields are, and with the stadium option there, and that grant was accepted. So right now we're sitting on a 4.4, yes, science stuff, $4.4 million that the government's going to give Nom Notch schools to build a safe room out of that site. So a little bit about the safe room. I kind of switched it up. If you're at the last meeting, I kind of threw some stuff in here different. We started looking at a dome project. If anybody's seen one of these in Stover, Webb City, Ray-Pec, we've done many of these. A dome for a safe room is the best way to get a large span. So you get more people and you can go up to 300-foot span if you wanted to. But it will protect kids from an EF5 tornado. This one's sized to protect 1,070 occupants. Like I said, we got $4.4 million. The district share of that, they pay 25%, is $1.4 million. Dome costs are $7 to $8 million. But that's what the dome looks like and planned. It could. We're still working on the plans and stuff. That stuff's not set. But you can see all the ancillary spaces. We got locker rooms, bathrooms, training rooms, storage rooms, all within this dome. And that's Webb City. If you have not been to Webb City, this is a 180-foot dome, but I wanted to show you what that could look like. It's a real collegiate feel to the dome, to the arena. And I still think it looks nice on the outside too. So we're proceeding with the dome for the safe room. And now we want to talk about the new site over by the ball fields, 50 and 23. Probably most people are familiar with that. The district now owns this property in Orange, which is a great move. It's set forth for the future. That's the overhead, and you can see we've got MoDOT as their fields right here, storage areas. So we've got basically this area to work with in this plan. Here's an option, and part of this safe room, we're looking at it as a kickstart for a new high school down the road. So whatever we do here with the safe room, wherever it goes, we want it to be able to attach to an existing new high school down the road. And that's what Dr. Wheeler was talking about in the future. So right now on this plan, we would have new football stadium, rope back track, so you get that wider turf area, so you can have soccer, practice fields, your dome, and then this would be a connector piece, and we can talk about that in a minute. New bleachers, new parking. Don't worry about the shape of this thing. That's just showing 110,000 square feet is what we would need for a high school. We're just dashing something in for now. That is not designed yet, but we do need to kind of lay out where this safe room is going to go. The other option for the field would be over here. And I'll show you that in more detail, and then go ahead and do that baseball training facility too. So zooming in a little bit, this idea was set up so the high school would be facing the corner, really addressing that corner. Parking lot behind, and their access roads would be baseball facilities. Once again, your stadium, these would be, we're working it out now where we can get walk down bleachers. Art, has anybody been to Sedalia at Smith Cotton Stadium? We designed that stadium where it has, you come down the concourse, you go down some, you walk down, and then you can go up bleachers too. So we're looking at a possibility of doing something like that here. The FEMA dome, this area would have also the football locker rooms within that dome and be able to access directly to the field. This would be a connector space where you'd come in and you'd have a pre-function space for the gym. The gym would be a walk-down gym, so you come up on the top concourse and walk down to your seat. Nobody's ever getting on the floor. And then underneath that pre-function space would be the wrestling room, and possibly weight rooms. All right. Any questions on this guy? It might be new concept for you people.
This might be off topic, but with the expansion and whatnot, we just moved here.
Yeah.
I don't know what class Mount Monster is in their sports.
What class are you?
Depends on the sport. 3-4.
3-4. Is there any talk with going up a class and because of the expansion, or no, stay in the same class?
It depends. It really depends on where we break down the classifications. It's tough in our conference with some of the smaller class schools from a competitive size, but I don't foresee that we would jump into a class 5. I think we'd stay in that 3-4 range.
Great.
Yeah, right now we have 450 kids, and we would build this for 550, just for some room for expansion. All right. Yes.
What about traffic flow? Are you going to redo the roads because that won't carry it?
Out here, yes, we'd have to. We're just initially looking at it. We're trying to line up these things, and then we'd have to get it with MoDOT and see what we need to do. But yes, traffic flow is always going to be an issue, but we're going to have to really figure it out here. But the good thing is we've got plenty of area to do it and get people off the highways and onto the property without hanging out on the property or off the property onto the highway. So we got plenty of room to do it. We just got to figure that out. We've got one of the premier traffic designers on our team, civil engineering, so we'll dig into that and get that worked out for sure.
Does that include the intersection of like 50 and 23?
Yeah, we're going to have to do something. Oh, the overpass? I don't know about that.
Oh, okay.
I just don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that MoDOT would move?
I can get to that.
Okay.
That's option 3 potentially. So,
So, I was wondering, that whole
thing with the baseball complex and everything, we're talking about 76 acres, something like that, is that correct?
Something like that.
Something close. And so, and we just bought, like 40 acres or something to spend parking that house. So anyway, the park that's designated for the high school area, how many acres is that? I mean,
I don't know. You have any
like,
idea?
we talking 20 or 15 or, you know, I guess, I just wanted to make sure we had enough room as well.
We have plenty of room, and I'll just kind of address that at the same time. We've been in discussion with MoDOT back to probably 2016, 17, and have a memo from them expressing their willingness and affinity to relocate that site. So that has been in the works. It's just a function of finding the right pathway, getting the state support, and we, we have a lot of support, but it's not done until it gets across the finish line. But our local elected officials have pledged their support, governor, lieutenant governor, MoDOT, so we're getting close. They have a couple of alternative sites selected. And the interesting thing about this facility is Johnson County is one of the few counties in the state that actually have 2 sites for MoDOT. Most counties only have 1 combined site. And we have this site, and the site in Warrensburg is no longer an ideal site after the interchange went in from
Well, I guess, you know, the baseball complex, and there's some space over there that can be used. And then the whichever way we go with the fields, and looks like that's stretched out really nice. I mean, plenty of room. But I didn't want to end up crowding the actual campus site, you know.
Right. Yeah, and right now we're getting all the soils testing and all that. We're doing all that just to make sure that that's even a build site. But I think the goal, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this MoDOT property, but the goal would be we've got to get some answers on this safe room, where it's going first. We've got to submit an application here pretty quick to FEMA, and we could list 2 different sites potentially. But we'd like to place that so it would work either way. If we get the MoDOT site or we don't, so that's what we're kind of looking at right now. So.
I think we'll get the MoDOT site. It's just the matter of timing, so that's one of the big variables that we're trying to balance out right now.
All right.
I got a question.
Yeah.
You can't guesstimate how much room is for the high school there?
That's 110,000 square feet right here.
I'm talking
So-
about the area of land.
Yeah, the land right there.
What do you typically plot for a high school build out?
Yeah, 50,000, 75,000.
I mean, acreage.
Yeah.
Part of what makes, 50,000.
50 acres, 70 acres.
So we really have a lot more space than what could be required. And that's also part of what we're looking into with the site plan is how that might, how that might be used differently in the future.
Don't blow it up like that. It looks more in ratio better than it did when it was farther back. Anyway.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And we just got our survey, so I can get those answers to you too and break that out pretty easy. And then the other alternative stadium location would be over here, and the ball field and the Burgess Room. All right, so we're checking all the boxes. We got a new FEMA safe room, walked out competition gym, locker rooms, restrooms, gym pre-function, wrestling, 8-lane track and turf field, accommodate soccer like I talked about, optimal field orientation north-south, and adequate parking, optional bleachers on the visitor side, 500, 2,000 on the home side, batting cages, indoor, the whole thing. This is all what we talked about. And then we go back to the middle school site, which would be the middle school. Okay, back up. The thinking is once that high school gets relocated there, middle school would then go to the high school, right? So this is going back to what would be the middle school site if that were to happen. Current high school. We really wouldn't need to shift the track. We don't need to do all that because the 7-lane track's fine for the middle schools. What we would do is put a new track surface, new turf, tear out the concrete bleachers, and put 500 bleachers for middle school events, and then have an accessible path up to those bleachers. Pretty minimal upgrades, but still make this stadium a nice, feasible stadium for use for the community. That's all part of option 2. The pros, once again, we can host some district track meets. We've got all new facilities, we get soccer, establish a site for the future high school, adjacency to the existing facilities, adequate parking, no disruptions to the athletic season. So if we build this thing out here, you can continue to run track and continue to play football all you want until we get this done. The goal is to have this stadium constructed by football season 23. So we also taken advantage of that FEMA money, that $4 million. Cons are it's higher cost, obviously. Temporarily separates the academics from the athletics, pretty much all regards. You lose your traditional feel of Don Bostrom Stadium, and MoDOT aesthetics. This thing is not pretty right there on your high school campus, right? So that'd be a con, I think. And the cost is 14 to 18 million, but we're getting $4 million for the bill. Right? Now, what happens if we were to gather up this site here? They're working on it. Take this site here and now make it part of the campus. You know, all kinds of things open up. Now we're opening up this whole thing. We can look at whatever. The key is going to be on the scheduling is figuring out where that needs to go so that it could work this way or this way. Because I don't think by the time Dr. Wheeler can get that thing purchased, we're going to have to have some answers for FEMA. So that's what we're working on behind the scenes right now. Same stuff, all the same goodies, just different location. And you know, once again, don't pay attention to shape. If we get this site, I see it being in a more rectilinear shape. But everything we need would be right here. You could do something else with this side of the property if you wanted to. But that's also available if we were to flip everything. One option we're looking at right now is putting the safe room somewhere here so that we can add on to the school this way, or we could do something on this side either way with that FEMA safe room set. All the same list of good things. Going back to the middle school, would be the middle school and doing those things. The pros are all the same, except we're eliminating the aesthetic issue with MoDOT being there. We don't know what MoDOT land cost, so we've got the same dollar figure. So, same stuff. We'd love to get to this spot. It would be awesome. Just to relieve that, but we got to make some decisions here pretty soon. The purple is FEMA. The first submittal to FEMA is due actually March 1st. We got a little bit of an extension from them in order just to run down the MoDOT property and see what we can do, but eventually that time frame is probably going to run up and we're going to need to get moving on it. The rest of it, like I said, we're going to try to get in. We want to play football there in 23. So FEMA, we're going to go by their timeline. We're submitting in March. There's extra submittals that go on. I don't think we'd probably have anything ready to go out to bid until fall on that. So by the time FEMA gets their act together, so we're looking at probably 2 years from now before the gym would be done, a year and a half, 2 years. So, but the stadium, we're not under those conditions. We can get rolling on the stadium pretty quick. There's a whole bunch of words. All words I've already said. So that's really it. I would love to field questions. I went through that pretty quick. Or if you want to come up afterwards and ask questions, you can do that too.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be better to have the safe room, the gym, close to the baseball fields and the
Yeah, that'd be great too.
I mean, we're just out there.
Yeah.
Nowhere.
It would be great, yeah. If we can figure out a way to connect the high school if something happens here and we can't get this, that's the issue, the thing we're dealing with right now. And we're pretty confident we can get it done, but we're trying to delay FEMA as long as we can.
So one of the things I want to also clarify is, and the one thing that bothers me the most about this phase one is it's all sports.
Yeah.
So if that's going through your mind, I just want to kind of talk to the why of that. A lot of it has to do with the grant that we received for the FEMA Dome, which will be our gymnasium. But more than that, it really has to do with the issues that we have at our current high school. The turf is end of life. The bleachers are becoming, even though they've always been the way that they are right now, there is some deterioration, and it's just not the it doesn't offer the safety functions and features that you would want to see in a stadium. So there's an ongoing liability, and it's fine until there's an injury. And we've been blessed with that, so be careful walking on those bleachers as we have for the last 40 years. But with a new build, we really need to address those safety issues. And we knew really one of the hardest things for myself, and I think for the board, is not taking action on some of those items that we know need action, because we only get to spend those dollars once. If we rebuild that stadium where it is, and address some of the other needs, like, frankly, a respectable wrestling room for what is probably our very best, most successful program historically in the school, they have not had what I would consider the type of facility that they really deserve. So when we look at that, if we build those components on this current high school facility, by default, that money is spent. It ties us into our current 4-site footprint, and that has been one of the biggest the fork in the road for us. So we decided to look at this new concept. Meanwhile, our student population over the last 6 years has grown from about 1,450 to 1,900 students. So we're seeing that growth trend. We know with the V21 bed down coming in, we may see a little bit more of an influx. That kind of what we saw when the missile wing and the V2 landed here. So we're kind of planning for that growth. And from a community standpoint, we really have an opportunity. Unlike most communities, we turn over our citizens quite frequently as they move in and move out. And every time those citizens are making a decision about where they want to live. And opening up an opportunity for the school to be a catalyst to try to attract some of those citizens into the community, try to build the community population, build amenities, circulate local dollars. That's part of what we really want to try to accomplish too, beyond just what we're doing with education. And by the way, a lot of folks retire out of Whiteman. A lot of you guys retired out of Whiteman. If we can find an opportunity to provide the kind of value proposition in a community, in a school, that would attract them to maintain their residence here in retirement, that would be a big win for our community as well. So if you look at the sports, that's kind of the why behind that. I can tell you, as cool as some of this stuff is going to be for our kids, the full build out of the high school, what we have planned for our workforce development, a STEM ecosystem partnership with the base, is going to be really spectacular. We've built a lot of really great programs in manufacturing, robotics, engineering, aviation. We're going for a $2 million grant here in a month or two to build out our cybersecurity. So there are a lot of really, really good career pathways for our students. And also part of the overall plan too is to have some of those certificated career pathways available for retiring veterans that are coming out of Whiteman that may be able to do some adult ed. All of this is coming at a time which is very favorable. On one side, the state has about $10 billion additional dollars that they're looking for a place to land. So we're tracking that very closely. We had a chance to meet with the governor last week and revisit this plan, which he endorsed back in 2016. So we're really hoping to take advantage of the funds that are available. On the flip side of that, we know the construction costs are a little bit higher. So we're balancing that out with the grants. But this is the value proposition. The plan allows for expansion of preschool, realignment and reconfiguration of our elementary schools, taking this school and putting it on the high school campus where you have sports amenities, you have some additional career technical education spaces for some of these programs, and then kind of making our flagship high school. So that's the condensed version of what we're trying to accomplish here. And when we established this list five or 6 years ago, they were all empty. And you can see probably from even the back row, there are several of the items listed in red that the board has accomplished. So the last big piece is going to be securing that federal grant to go ahead and move forward on construction of the new high school. So just wanted to kind of provide that context of the why this is so heavy on sports right now. And I think that's a really important concept to understand. And it goes back to being able to spend that money one time in one place on these needs that have been identified.
Quick question. Now, with the focus, obviously, sports is a big attraction. Has there been any talk, any thought of redesigning the logo that would kind of attract and show and signify progress and the right positive progress?
I've seen a lot of really bad logos in my time. I think our logo stacks up pretty nicely, but at the same time, it is something that's crossed my mind. I haven't really vocalized that, but it might be something to revisit. We've got our director of communications who does a great job on our branding, but that's could be a sacred cow too.
Yeah.
So
it's a certain attraction that some people love. It catches people's eyes.
There are a lot of things that are probably, if it ain't broke, polish it kind of thing. But it's not off the table. One of the other things, a lot of schools do a great job of branding their mascot, and that's something too. A mascot can be its own standalone program within a school setting, and I think that's one area where we really do need to step up and have the Panther brand be in our character ed programs, out at our assemblies, making the rounds.
Right.
And then along with the logo, there's been a lot of talk about changing the name of the high school. I can almost guarantee you that there's no part of the administration or the board that wants this to be anything more than Knob-Nostra High School. There were some things that went out earlier when we were doing some fundraising on the private side with Northrop Grumman. If you've heard of the Northrop Grumman High School, that was many, many years ago, and it was a couple of slides that went out when we were reaching out for a private partner. But just like our current campus is named Jackman Campus, there could be options for some naming rights for the right kind of partnership, but the high school proper will be named and remain named Knob-Nostra High School from everything I've heard from our board and our administration. The Smith property in the purchase agreement, there were some caveats to have some tribute to the Smith name somewhere on this campus. So there's a Jamboree barn out there that has a lot of history with it. So we're looking at how we might blend that into the site to have some historic preservation there. So thanks for opening up that opportunity.
I have a question, real quick. I maybe you already said it, but when would it be finished-ish? When are you hoping the whole thing to be done?
Well, we've been after it for 5-6 years, and we have two pathways. We could go to our voters and propose a higher tax levy than I think is appropriate and get it done that way. It's not something that the board or administration feel like is the appropriate pathway. So we're pursuing federal grants, and with the money available right now, I'm hoping, if we can secure that final grant in the next 18 to 24 months, meanwhile planning the master plan, that would be.
So if you got the money in 24 months, like say you just had the money, how long does it take then to build?
If we have the money today to build it out,
Yeah.
2.5 years.
Okay.
So middle school, 6th, 7th grade might see it.
And what happens to the school?
Becomes a upper elementary.
Oh,
And then this would become an upper elementary, opening up expansion of our preschool program in our 2 elementary buildings.
sorry if I said all that. We were in the 8th grade meeting.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what happens to this building, but since MoDOT is state property and we are public property, is buying state property an expensive proposition or a bargain? I mean, how much is it gonna cost a lot to get that MoDOT property?
You said if I get it purchased, I don't plan on purchasing it.
Ah, okay. Just a
But
transfer
so,
of deed.
so what we're working on, I mean, it's a lofty aspiration, but what we're proposing to the state is that if they find a way to appropriate that property from the state level to the district, we then stack that grant along with the SEMA grant, the local effort, and hopefully we secure a private partner. And that builds into our federal grant proposition and gives us a better leverage to secure that federal grant. So Lieutenant Governor Kehoe's team is acutely aware of what we're doing, and Representative Brad Hollis, Senator Hoskins have both endorsed and support this. So we're either going to go a legislative route or a direct governor appropriation is what we're looking for. And that would basically be a contribution from the state level. That appropriation would be sent to MoDOT to help them finance their new facilities. And one of the things that's great on this property, there's about I don't remember the square footage. I think probably the building there is probably $1.5 million is what it would cost us to build that at least. So there's a pretty good asset there on MoDOT that would be a great career technical space or something along those lines. And then on the MoDOT, last case scenario, the material storage runs along the highway frontage. We've talked about worst case scenario, we reconfigure the material storage in a east-west configuration, which would allow a better space for the building as well. So those are the options we're looking at. So hopefully we can get that done. So I know we had a question before about teacher input, community input on the design. What would happen to the high school space to get that ready to be a functional middle school? Some of those spaces. That is do you want to speak to how that plays out as we design and build that out?
Yeah, once we get to that part, we will engage the staff and engage the community in visioning sessions. We're going to take what we have there now and then work on what programs do you want. Too many times our spaces dictate our programs. We'd like to flip that around. I mean, our programs dictate our spaces. So we'll do that when we get into designing the high school, the current high school, get ready for middle school. So we got a little bit of time.
Is there going to be any input on what we're doing today from the community on placement of football field?
I thought that's what this was. If you guys have any input on where we're going with it, let me hear it. Did you have something else in mind, Larry?
Well, we basically have boiled it down to this site, but orientations, anything that, what you're using some of those buildings for, or the cross uses of some of those facilities.
Oh, yeah.
That have not been flushed out.
Right, yeah. We'll get with the staff and make sure we get that vetted out. And we can have some community visioning meetings at that point. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Right now, we're going through and trying to figure out a way to place that safer. What would work best? A couple options in order if you get MoDOT or if you don't, and it still would work for the comprehensive high school down the road. That's what we're trying to get through right now. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to the committee and then ultimately.
I think most of the input in the processes I've been through, some of it's location and placement on the site. Most heavily it's on the design features and inside that footprint where some spaces go. But you can see we have some options. We have some variables that are not yet ironed out and some timelines that we're trying to meet. So it's a little bit of making the best informed decision with the most foresight that we can. And frankly, we may not get it exactly perfect. I've heard a lot of complaints in my 7 years about baseball complex, about this, that, or the other. I look at it and say it's one of the nicest complexes. This community has provided the nicest baseball, softball complex in our conference and one of the nicest in the region. And while not perfect, it's pretty amazing for our kids in a lot of ways. And it hopefully will keep getting a little bit better.
Just for clarification, so this would be phase 1, the dome. Phase 2 would be the track at the current high school in that area, is that correct?
It's all one phase now, really. I mean, once we vacate, we just have to work around the seasons.
Okay, because I didn't know if you were like, we'll do phase 1, then a couple years later, phase 2.
No, it would all be done. It's all funded. So
It's one phase, but there are different starting points and timelines built in. The first part would be the stadium and the sports fields. And the numbers are groundbreaking. They'll be both of those will be occurring simultaneously. The dome will just start a little bit later.
Is the idea of a safe room a desired expectation or becoming a requirement for public spaces?
yeah, 2015 building code required that all educational occupancies have a safe room. Right, and a lot of authorities having jurisdiction, meaning the city, could choose to waive that if they want to. But we try to get those in, and we get funded. We try to do that. And they're not going to come in and say you need to build a safe room now. But if you try to, in some jurisdictions, if you try to add on a classroom or two, they might make you make a safe room big enough for the whole population. So that's code now. So we try to follow the code. If we get this $4 million.
One of the reasons we went in the function of a gymnasium is for a lot of the parents in here that I know I've seen out late at night with their kids in youth sports. Early in the morning, we have kids practicing before school just to compete for that gym space. And we'd like to get a little bit of relief with this project. It would house, if at this time it looks like it would house two nearly full-size courts when you go side by side. So that's going to offer some relief on that. And then same thing for football, soccer, youth sports. We have a lot. I mean, we're just practically on top of each other. I know some of the coaches in here and cheer coaches would show just how much some additional space would help with our youth sports program. So that's one of the goals as well. Hopefully get kids having those practices a little bit closer to the beginning or end of school and not having them out as late, hopefully, over the long term. Because I think they'll practice in here tonight until 9 or 10 o'clock next door as well.
Excited?
So, from a political standpoint, we've secured endorsements. I mentioned from Governor Parson. We also have Senator Blunt and Representative Parsler, who have provided written letters of support, as have our last 3 wing commanders out at Whiteman. So we have a lot of support that is built over the years to try to get this accomplished. If you miss session 1 or 2, it's important to note that the service secretaries for the Army, Navy, and Air Force about four years ago wrote a letter to the National Governors Association, and they said our number 1 priority for retention of our airmen and quality of life is the quality of the education served to kids. They said that there are places like Maxwell Air Force Base and a number of others around the country that you have geo bachelors and you have a lot of family complications, and they will not take their families to those spaces because the public education is really poor. On the flip side of that, we have literally the best educational program based on the 2019 study conducted by the Air Force. So we add value to the mission out of Whiteman. Speaking candidly, I don't know that if we had a horrible school that the mission would change at all, but that's what they're saying. So we're using that as an opportunity that if they're going to put you know, if they're going to put that in headlines, then let's press them on that, give them, you know, an opportunity to fund something that's really spectacular. And we're also marketing this as a scalable, replicable model for that STEM ecosystem that could be placed and secured at other installations around the country. So we're trying to provide that leadership for them as well.
Does that mean there would be DoD funds involved in?
So there's a grant program called the Defense Communities Infrastructure Program. We began working to establish that program 6 years ago. It took us a couple of years to get that written into the National Defense Authorization Act. That was written in, we got that into law in 19. It was funded in 20 and 21. And we're working now to advocate for increased funding for that line item. But that is the federal grant that we're going after. That's been written into law. There's also been the reinsertion of plus-ups and earmarks in Washington, D.C. So we're leaning pretty heavily on Representative Hartzler, Senator Blunt to try to help get this across the finish line as well. There's a lot of money. We just have to find the right pathway to get it here. And that comes back to, we could go to our voters, but that would, to do the complete project, to do it the right way, we need that infusion of outside dollars.
Anybody else have any questions, they come on up and talk to me or Dr. Wheeler. Others?
Wide group. So we do have an additional 5th community session set for March 22nd. That content has not been aligned yet, so if there are any requests, anything we want to revisit, anything you haven't heard or want to hear more about, please feel free to let us know tonight or call, shoot an email. We're very open to making sure that we share the why, share the what, and articulate kind of the entire vision of what we're trying to do.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone.